Greetings. I hope you're doing well. I am here with you today to talk about DNA and kind of some of the misconceptions and moving forward in our idea of analyzing and what can we get from our DNA, essentially. This is not a conclusive video, meaning this is just one aspect of DNA analysis and things that we can get from it um, in a short video. All right, so here are some of the things. Like I've had some experiences. Um, I've had some experiences where um, DNA was seen as a determining factor for family relations and connections. And in some ways it is, but it is not a determinator on its own. And so, one of the things I want to explain is there are different in the world of genealogy when we're trying to learn about our own family's lineage and how it has, and oftentimes we are going backwards, not forward. We're not naming all of the grandkids and the cousins that were just born, which should and is still part of it. But most of the work is really in spaces where people are no longer living or have reached a generation where many people have passed away, and we are trying to piece together information that we do not know, or those who are around us may not know either. And so we're in a space of research. And so I want to center that as our what we do. And that should be the center of all of it. DNA is not research. Making a family tree is not research. Research is kind of like the methods that it includes like a strategy in terms of like, maybe you want to write your own story. That could be a form of um, adding into, this pile of information that can be used as research. Um, there is also the area of um, looking at documents. Many of us are online looking through Ancestry or Family Search or newspapers and there's plenty of other sites that you can find documents that are not on these uh, platforms. And so inside of that, one of the things that we want to be clear about is how we document that. But then what role does DNA play in that? It is simply a tool. And so one of the things that because of the like availability and access to DNA and its popularity now as a way to just like find family, um, for the most part, DNA technology is a new thing. Our DNA is not. It's very old, right? And so when we're thinking about DNA, we should think about DNA in accordance with the platform that is on. Um, that these are people that are just testing your DNA at a large volume. We're thinking about the populations that it's being compared to. How does that one platform go about its testing? In in addition to the idea that how we like kind of like the threshold where we interact with this technology, like how they are categorized for us, what we see on our screen versus what it means in the system. And so we should be aware of that. Um, I will put a little political tag, but we really have to like think about these systems as not being there forever. Nothing is forever, but it's the idea that we do not own these systems. We are at the mercy of any type of change that they wanted to do, they just do. and move on with their lives. And so we have to be aware of like that aspect of this business is um, kind of marketing the DNA test, and we are learning the system that it's in. And so things like GEDmatch may be another system, 23andMe, another system. And so as you learn about it, but one thing that is consistent across all systems is this idea of like, what does a DNA match mean? Or what do all of my DNA matches mean? And so say you have it, because I've had direct experience with um, people trying to use DNA as a definitive tool to determine if someone belongs to their family. And it can go one of two ways. One, it is the you want to think about the matches you see, and you also want to think about it almost like the matches you don't see, right? The people that yes, there are a group of people that have not done the DNA test, but then there's also a group of people that have and may still not match you. And so then we start to look at generation, right? And so one of the things when it comes to DNA is to really be cognizant of our generation, right? The generation that we're looking in. And so before I get into that, I want to clear up the idea around the present of matches and the absence of matches, that we're not able to like there's different types of DNA. That's one. Autosomal, and different types. So let me clarify that. There's our DNA, that's it. But there's different types of testing that's done on our DNA. So we have mitochondrial DNA testing, we have Y-DNA testing, autosomal DNA testing. And if we can think about the most widely used test that people are doing is the autosomal. And it's pretty much looking at your traits and connections to people. But also, when you think about the Y-DNA and mitochondrial, they're not used for finding out specific people that you relate to, right? It's a different type of test that kind of looks at this idea of thousands of years in the past where it's not really necessarily a community, but you're connected to perhaps a part of the world. Maybe it connects you to a certain culture, it's or a cultural group. So these are things that come from those kinds of tests. So, but so often, I think we look at autosomal DNA testing as a, oh, this gives us more of what we need and all of what we need. And it's not that certain, not by itself. It it's almost DNA has no legs without research. DNA has no legs without developing the research to create the family tree that helps us understand our DNA connections. It's it's not they have done, I think these platforms have done a great job of trying to simplify how we see our DNA, but sometimes we can oversimplify the work that's needed to really understand how we match to our DNA. And sometimes it just happens, we match, we talk, you have to talk to people, you have to communicate with them. You cannot just look at someone, a strange person's, the first thing you know, when you go on Ancestry and you want to, even if they do have a tree, but even if they don't, it's more of a reason you want to reach out, say, hey, I match you. How do we? It doesn't automatically tell you how you're related just because you look at someone's tree, that is a DNA match, right? So it requires conversation and understanding other elements that connect to DNA connection. And so that's why we cannot just assume that that's enough, right? That's one fallacy myth that I'm trying to get out. Like DNA alone does not build out your tree or It's not actually the research part of genealogy. It's just a factual, it's like data, but it's not the research that you would be able to analyze by itself, right? And so the second part is this, that what you see are confirmed matches, so to speak, that confirm their relationship to you up until a certain point. So parental connections, you're going to have a easier time finding parent connections if they're there. That's first generation. And then we have second generation, first cousins and second, you have common grandparents. They're a little bit easier. They're not as distant. But imagine going into third and fourth. So great grandparents or great great grandparents, there's a lot to be said about the accuracy of the matches. So the matches you have to a certain extent are very accurate. And some companies have used thresholds to kind of pull away from the idea of what maybe this match isn't as strong. But that's not really what I'm saying here. What I'm saying here is they definitely match to you. That is a match. What you want to start to look at is other connections. And that's why even if it's a faraway match, it could still very well be a true match. But you may be just looking at it in isolation. It's so important to connect, to start to do research, to look at location. What are things? It requires a very active component of research to really connect the dots the further you go out. I think we can agree on that. But what is not always clear is this idea that what if someone doesn't match me? And this comes up more often than we think. And sometimes it's not as big a deal because you might match someone else and they don't match you. And so I wanted to point you, let me share um, a document. So one of the things that comes up is the absence of matches. Not like they took the DNA test and you still don't match them. Um, are they related? And so, according to the research, there is generation wise, there are various things that come up. For instance, let me put it to you this way, so that we're not completely um, just living in a theoretical space. If I were to think about connections, and how they work. Imagine is um this is me, right? Or you. And I want to find out my parents' information. So I'm gonna do my mom. My mom has um a lot of siblings. She's one of 11. And what I have done is I have been able to test, I believe, at least four or five. And so the one with the M is my mother, right? And so I've tested multiple siblings so far, and um, I'm going to match my mom, and I'm going to match my siblings. That's not going to be an issue, right? In terms of accuracy, I think it's pretty much over the 50% threshold, right? Or 90% threshold for that matter. But when I start to think about other people that could be part of my family, right? That aren't me, that aren't the definite child. There are other cousins that are in the world. I'm just putting these little nodules out here. Um, and they may be connected to my mom in different ways. Maybe they're connected to her grandparents or perhaps further back to her great grandparents, but they're part of the same family. The chances of, if we go back, say one more generation. Maybe they're like a third cousin, one time removed, all of these different languages that vocabulary words that I use. When we start to think about the matches, what happens to this person, and this is our person over here, just so we know. This is just, you know, someone that we don't know. The people who are already imprinted is the people that we know, right? And this is usually where we start to like try to like figure out who's our family and who isn't. But when we start to think about it, this person could very well match this person, this sibling could match this sibling. They didn't take the DNA test now. They could match this sibling and not match this person. There is a chance they could match this person. They could match this person. Like there's no standard way of understanding how our DNA will be distributed in each person, especially if the person is related at a very different generation level. Once you start to get into third and fourth cousins, the accuracy is not as so. This person could very well be related and still not match. Now, imagine. So here's the thing, and let me try to cover some of these things up. Imagine if she this person matches, right? I'm trying to and this is the I'm trying to pull it a little bit over. Um this person matches, and I'll do it like this. Um those people. However, these are the people that did not submit their DNA test, have not done their DNA test, right? And also that they may or may not match the person who did it. Imagine, imagine this other scenario. Imagine only one person from your sibling group has done the DNA test, and you think that you might be the gatekeeper to determine all the people from your line. And you will find some people, and that's what I mean. The presence of matches allows you to know who connects, but the absence of a match does not conclusively determine if you are related to someone, right? Because now we have to think in terms of mathematical probability, right? What are the chances that a cousin or maybe this person's sibling, sister or brother might be the one that connects to the majority of people, but this sibling does not. You know, we have to think about that very carefully when we're starting to look at, because I've emailed people on Ancestry like, um, you have a similar tree to the one I'm constructing or I'm studying, and I see we don't match, but I try to let them know, you know, that doesn't mean we're not connected. But I think it would be great to talk to you about these similarities in our trees. Like, what is your reason for, because I don't even know if they're researching their own, you know, kind of what people play calls a ghost tree or something, where they're just trying to figure things out. But I'm curious if information can be shared in like understanding your connection to this group and maybe what my connection is to this group also. And so we have to think about it. I have an article that I would like to share, and I'll we'll put the link above here and in the comments section of the video that I guess it's not showing up, but I will put it in the comments section. I might have overspent my I may not be able to copy into Zoom. So outside of that, Let me just move this out of the way. So when we're thinking about it, so this article comes from the Genealogy Bank website. And so it is just an excerpt. And in this section, it talks about do ancestry DNA tests find all relatives? And you can even replace this with any type of DNA test, find all relatives. And this is an interesting thing. And I'm just going to call our attention to the a particular section that kind of deals with the numbers of this. And so here's one. Oh boy. I have an unsteady hand with the mouse. But when it comes to this, go ahead and read it on your own, but I will take some time to read about it. So when we're thinking about this, oh boy, um, this this is the technology, right? We're talking about it. But when we're thinking about these ideas around how DNA is analyzed and what it means when someone doesn't match us that you think should, and what that means. And I think sometimes we can jump off the deep end. One thing we want to think about first is generation. We want to think about generation. And we also want to think about testing more people in our known family. And so I'm pretty much known for traveling to places with a DNA kit to do DNA because it's just a fraction of the DNA of our elders, you know. So here it is. It's surprising, and I'm reading this, but remember that 10% of third cousins do not share any DNA, and up to 50% of fourth cousins share no DNA. So even though they are still related, distant cousins might share no DNA. This is one reason why building a family tree requires more than just DNA testing alone. I cannot agree with this more. And it continues to go on like science can widen your search and provide an astounding amount of new information about your genealogy. However, good old-fashioned research is still necessary to identify distant relatives and confirm family relationships. And this is pretty much, in a nutshell, what we have to do if we want to take advantage of our DNA access. We got our DNA test. We found some cousins. We learn about different locations that our family are either currently living or were living. And it's fascinating. And I think it could be daunting to come up to a situation where some people are not connecting in the way we expected. And even in a personal case with mine, I was um, I'm connecting to these people that are from this particular area in North Carolina. And then I was matching some people, but not all people. And I would say this from my father's perspective. He was matching certain people, but not others. And what I realized is none of his first cousins had taken a DNA test. Like I think just recently, one of his first cousins did. So if we're really basing our entire, like my father could never be like the gatekeeper of all the Griffin ancestry that could possibly be held. When I start to think about, we're trying very diligently to get more people to test, but most of the other people that have tested are like beyond younger generations than even myself. So going down into like it would be from my father's generation, almost like grandchildren and great grandchildren are testing, right? So that extends the reach forward in a way that's like, oh wow, it brings you up to a certain level, so do you know you're connected to that generation, and now we have to use the elders to bring us further back, and so that's why it's so important. You know, elder in your family, or wait a second, in your community, give them a DNA test. Help them out. All right. Give them something because it's truly about collective family groups. And like I said, if I were able to test all of my mother's siblings, it still would not be the complete genetic code of the parent generation. And that's 11 siblings, right? I still would not have the complete genetic code of the generation before, just like they don't have the complete genetic code of the so we have I think it's important, so I'm going to close this out. I think it's important for us to really take DNA and much as we love it and we on it and doing our work, to think about how we can move forward. And so I want to close out with this idea in terms of groups, because that's been a topic on my mind, how we deal with these groups. And so connecting with people, I think, is an essential part of our research. And so, of course, we have Facebook groups, we have offline groups, we have GenMatch group projects, and we just connect in group format. And I encourage that. Now, here's the thing. There are some, I'm going to go from the Facebook side because it's kind of an official landing place of community connection. What I do know is that some people have groups that are DNA based groups. And then some people have family groups that are family tree based groups. And so they're very different in their mission, or they probably should be clear about that difference. So in a DNA group, Facebook group, I would imagine, and I'm a part of groups that are like that. It's heavily research based, and it's centered around usually a certain match to a certain person or family members, right? And so you matching those family members, and any one of them, doesn't matter which one, you matching this circle of family members is not to define like if you're related, right? It's not to define that. It's to help us research how we're related. And we understand in those groups that perhaps you're related to someone that's in Mississippi. Perhaps you're related to someone in South Carolina. Like this family group can extend that way. And DNA groups work well for distant connections. So if you're looking for, perhaps some people may have a common ancestor that is of African ancestry, right? African birth, right there. And so it's an important connection. Like, like how do we connect to them? In these areas, like it's important to connect through DNA because it's a source of research. But not being part of the group does not define the lineage, right? Because I think every single person that does match, that has made it, may have family members in their group that do not match this person and should. Technically, if the way the bloodline goes, this person should definitely be matching. But do you understand? Like, so what happens in DNA groups, there's representatives of families that connect and are connected to this person, but committed to the research to find out, right? No confusion. Second, when we talk about family tree groups, they're usually connected through oral history, through a they're not measuring a person's DNA, but it helps, but person's DNA may help them find the group. So it's not like, oh, this is Charlene's great grandson's sister's brother's cousin. Like it's not as clear cut in family tree groups how everyone's related, but there is some general skeleton of how the family tree is spread out. And so adding to the family tree is a understanding that that might happen. And but it's also a way of determining like it has research inside of it. So you might learn about people's stories, you might learn about um, different pictures of family members. DNA in those situations could push away certain people. Not everyone has taken a DNA test. In those groups, you find that some people might match and some people might not, but they are still related to this family. And often they overlap with location, community location. So they're kin, and so those I think serve a great purpose too. And I think having one, sometimes there is this idea, and I think this is where you can easily go off track, is when you try to bring a DNA group with a family tree group. They serve different missions. And while it could be like you might have to make a decision, either it's a family tree group with people learning about their DNA, and that makes it a family tree group, right? But trying to do both under one umbrella can be off-putting because not everyone has done their DNA. And also, those that have done their DNA still may not know how they're connected, right? And then the third part is there are some people who are related that have done their DNA and may not match. Whew. What a mouthful. I hope this was brought some clarity to it, that when you come into your matches, um, and you do decide to do DNA testing, that you take it with a grain of salt, that you are actually simply investigating is what is in front of you. It is not an it is not definitive enough of a science to be able to say anyone who is not listed on here is not my relative. It's not that. And it's very important that we start to think about that in a generation wise. So yes, first and second, pretty solid connections, right? Very low chance of not being shown up in some regard to those kinds of connections. But when it starts going to fourth cousin, you want some, and it may go further back, and they are still part of that's the way family trees work. The roots go deep, and we have to think about how we um research, and that's an important part. um so think about that in your research. Do not get discouraged. um and also just look at DNA as a tool, please. And think of it in a more multidimensional way, that it's a tool like a flashlight. It's a flashlight. What does a flashlight do? Does it like, does it does it have a GPS on it? Does it tell you where to go? No, it just shines a light on the thing. And when you do that, it may have saved you years of time, but it doesn't take away the research aspect of doing the work to put your tree together. All right, have a blessed evening. I hope this was helpful. Peace.